Warm welcome back to the Last European YouTube channel. Today we're going to cover the NATO Summit that just took place in The Hague from a European perspective. So it's important to note firstly that the 2025 summit in The Hague followed the previous Washington summit, and just to get an idea and interpret what just happened a few days ago, we're going to need to look back to the Washington summit 1 year earlier and to compare one with the other, and from that see where we are now, take some inferences and analyze that. And so as a European citizen, we can know more about what's happening around us in terms of defense spending, perceived threats and possible wars that your country could be pulled into. So I have the summit declaration beside me right here, and the first thing I noticed about the Hague summit was that it was very brief in comparison to the Washington summit 1 year ago, in that it contained just 5 paragraphs or articles in comparison to the summit declaration last year during the Biden presidency, in which there were over 33 paragraphs. So this one is very subtle and perhaps more strategic. And you might be wondering, why do I say strategic? Well, in the Washington summit a year ago, and there was much more information given, which was useful for someone like myself, yourself, who wants to know more about the workings, internal workings of NATO, that they were a lot more blatant in giving out information in relation to apparent and perceived threats around the world. So in the last year's summit in Washington, Russia was definitively called out. Iran and North Korea and Iran for supplying Russia with either weapons or some sort of military aid. And then I believe even an African country war, and the Balkans was also mentioned. So a lot of different countries were mentioned the last NATO declaration, whereas this declaration just mentions Russia, if I read that correctly, and it's much more succinct in that it's just one brief line or two in comparison to perhaps a whole paragraph in the last declaration. So let's just go at this declaration now to see what we can draw from that and interpret. So the first paragraph is just a reference to Article 5, in which, for example, your member state, if you're part of NATO, whether you're Italy or France or Iceland, for example, or England or Canada or America, if you're attacked, you expect these other 31 countries to come to your mutual defense. So by being a member of NATO, that's just they declare their allegiance to this Article 5, which is common through all the NATO summits. So what's more interesting is the second paragraph, which is what really this summit is about. You can really see Donald Trump's signature behind a lot of this summit, and that it's mainly about funding and states agreeing to up their spending to 5% GDP annually. Now, this 5% is divided into two separate amounts, 3.5% and 1.5%, to a total commitment of 5%. It says here that 3.5% of GDP is allocated annually based upon the agreed definition of defence from the definition of NATO defence. Then an additional 1.5% to be inter alia amongst critical infrastructure to defend our networks, ensure civil preparedness, resilience, unleash innovation, and strengthen our defence industrial base. So that's a huge commitment of up to 5% from NATO partners. And then continues on then in paragraph 4, just it mentions that support for harnessing new technologies to support defence. So if you're looking at this or you didn't see the summit and you're wondering how this could affect you, well, what's most obvious is that there's an increase in your government's expense on defence. What was perhaps 2% or less than 2% a few years ago is now up to 5%. Now, if your government or your state is running a debt, that means it's going to have to find that money from somewhere else, whether it's your medical care, your educational system, your welfare system, your infrastructure, transport, or other public services, or else just to borrow more. So you should feel or to increase taxes, of course, is another way. So you should feel somehow the effects of this economically, unless your country all of a sudden has found a new income channel. And it's more strategic, as I said, in that it doesn't call out the only third nations except Russia, and its support for Ukraine. It does intimate support for Ukraine, but it's less dramatic as the declaration a year ago. The strategy is that it's not pinpointing other third nations this time, like the People's Republic of China, North Korea, Iran, or any other third nation. But my task here is to let you know, is to not just to give you this summit, having read the past summits, to tell you that to alert you to the fact that if you are a member of NATO and another member country happens to get in a war with what you might not thought would be a European nation, but a country on another side of the world, then your country, you could find yourself perhaps being at war, even though your country initially had nothing to do with that war. So that's why I'm alerting people to the previous summit, so people are aware of the fact of the consequences of a world, the war starting outside Europe. A lot of people, when they think about NATO, they think about, oh, someone's attacking my country in NATO, and then of course we'll come to each other's aid and stuff like that. But I'm making you aware of the fact that the initial start of this war could actually in fact be very far away from your country. And the other main take from this summit is the increased spending. It very much has Donald Trump's footprint in that regard. A mention of tariffs, or reducing tariffs on defense trade between the states, and this 5% thing, and not really calling out what they other treaties, so-called bad actors or things like that. So I hope this was useful. You may not agree with everything I said, so you can like the video. Certainly put in a comment. I'm interested in your take on this, and maybe you have you agree with something I said, or you have some extra. You saw something that I missed. I tried to cover the summit within a reasonable period of time, and I could go through it in a longer period of time if needed at a later stage. One thing I was going to mention as well, civil preparedness is mentioned in the 5% GDP defense spending. Yes, I think this figure is something that people who are serious about defense, they should consider. We saw in Iran, a country that was very not prepared for war, a lack of bunkers, a missile defense system that didn't adequately work, people running and fleeing. I think a lot of European cities, I'm thinking about Ireland, which is not a member of NATO, but wouldn't have sufficient underground facilities in case of ballistic or nuclear attacks, things like that. And this extra expenditure could certainly be for building more alertness among citizens, and actually facilities for citizens in case something unbeknownst should happen in the future. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that video and the information I gave just from my brief analysis of the NATO Summit in The Hague, and the previous one and the Washington one. I do post a lot of videos on European topics. They are from a European perspective, and so do tune in, and I will be updating another video. As I do find a lot of these issues, European issues particularly, are dealt with retrospectively rather than before they happen, and in that situation will always be one step behind the ball, and it's not the situation we want to be in. Okay, bye for now.